Welcome everyone to the Pro Trade Room Plus and the Core CPI report. My name is Lee Goldstein, the Trading Director for 10-Minute Trades. Please remember, I'm not a financial advisor. All the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. All right, a lot of charts this morning. We're looking at ZF, looking at MES, looking at YM, and a heads up that this report, if we look at the history of CPI, it's definitely been one of the more difficult reports to trade over the years. It's had many, many, many different setups because it's not generally consistent. So when you're, we keep trying different things to look for what's working now. And it does change quite a bit. So currently, also, don't forget, although it doesn't seem to matter to too many people these days, but don't forget that margins are raised. So if you're trading cash, you need more money in your cash account to cover the broker margin. That also makes a report more volatile. Brokers raise margins to protect themselves, not to protect us. All right? They tell us it's to protect us, but it's really to protect them from us. They don't want people blowing up their accounts and not having enough money in the account to cover the losses if it happens. All right? So keep that in mind. CPI last month was a breakout for everything. Those are when reports are fantastic to trade, when you have a breakout as your setup. The MES had a tradable move. The YM had a tradable, profitable move. Bonds had a tradable, profitable move. Everything broke out. There are, a bunch of different elements that make up this report. You've got month over month, year over year CPI. And then also you've got core versus non-core CPI. A lot of people don't know what core versus CPI is. And core is energy and food is taken out. Let's verify that. I forgot. I was thinking, I haven't looked up, well, what is core CPI versus CPI? So ChatGPT is a good place to ask something like that. What's the difference? It's a pretty simple question. So the key difference is regular CPI includes energy, food. Those are the big issues. Food and energy. And the reason, so they're included in regular CPI. The core excludes food and energy. And the reason they do that is because of the volatility. If you were just to use CPI including food and energy, it would seem like inflation is higher. So they had to come up with a way to make believe that inflation isn't higher. So they call that the core CPI. And then regular CPI includes everything. We don't live in a world where we don't pay energy or food, okay? That's not how it works. So CPI is not excluding anything, right? Because you don't go and pay for gas and you say, oh, okay, I'm not going to pay the increase because I only pay for core CPI. I'm not willing to pay for regular CPI. So I'm not paying the increased price in gas today at the gas station. You'll get arrested for theft of service. So we all know the truth. Inflation is up big time. There's probably not a single thing. Trump is saying the China deal is done, 10% tariffs. Look at the price. You want to be extremely careful. This may ruin our trade, okay? So we'll have to watch the market. Probably going to be ultimately good if it's true. If you think it's not on purpose that this news gets released right before CPI, it's in my opinion, it's probably on purpose. Maybe I would think that people in power know the report in advance. So let's look and see if inflation is up. Inflation, is it up? Who knows? That's what I'm curious about. That's what the market is responding to. One of the main reasons we love Financial Juice because they get the news and print it. Financial Juice Pro. It's really very, very, very good service. So that's what caused the market to move. So now we have to be extremely careful to just watch and determine if the market's going to be safe to trade. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up on after the news MES reverse continuation. Okay. So I'm going to right click the chart, click on strategy, double click news trader, and then breakout trade here, changing it to reverse continuation. And then I will just set up an MES scalp, 20 ticks, 50 ticks, target 1 and 2. My target 1 stop move, if it hits my first target, I'll move my stop to break even automatically. And I'll use a 50 tick stop. Remember, it's MES. All right, so they are saying the deal is done. Now it's on CNBC. We'll see. We've heard this before. So a reverse continuation. Label it reverse continuation. MES. And then you have to decide what account you're going to trade it in. So I'll be trading in prop accounts this morning. And then I'm going to enable it by clicking on the enabled button, and that turns my trade on. If I want to take a long or a short on the MES discretionary right now, I can just press the long or the short button. All right. And I'm going to do the same thing for the YM. I'd actually rather be looking at gold this morning, but we don't have a gold setup for this report at the moment. So bonds I usually do not trade them after a report in general. The most current software, David's on the website. Or David, just send me an email and I'll send you the PDF. also with the files. All right. Setting up a YM after the news, reverse continue, and I'll just trade one position on that. It's $5 a tick on the YM, and we'll go for 25 ticks on target 1, 50 ticks on target 2, break even, BE, target 1 stop move, 35 tick stop. Again, discretionary. It's not a it's not a timed trade or anything like that. Okay. You always have to choose the account you're trading on, and it's a good idea to label it. Why do we label it? And I'll explain why we label every setup. So reverse continue, position 1, just trading one position. So I don't need two positions. I'll make my first target 30. So you don't need a target 1 stop move either if you only trade one position. So position 1 is a 1. I have a target and a stop. Then I scroll down, I label it under setup, label, YM reverse continue, and I choose the account I'm trading it on. Also, make sure your chart is on that account so that it matches. And then you can always enable a discretionary trade. It has a button. So it's not going to trigger unless you trigger it. And then let's look at the DMM. There's quite a few choices on setups for CPI because quite a few things have worked. We've got an ES-MES breakout, a YM breakout, and a bond breakout. And bonds have been pretty good on this report. Going back to September, there's been quite a few nice winning trades on bonds. The YM is more recent. We really started looking at the YM back in March, and the YM had a nice move last month because, again, remember, it was a breakout for everything. Almost everything broke out well last month. You never know what kind of response you're going to get. You just don't know. CPI, we do see data feeds freeze at times on this report, so be aware. This is an ultra high risk event to trade because of things that can take place if you decide to trade exactly at the moment of the event. Okay? It is the way it is because you can get data feeds that just they freeze and the platform can freeze and it froze last month. If we let's look at the video. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find one thing. Bear with me here. Okay, last month we had a similar DMM, similar choices. All right, so we had YM in the middle, MES on the left, ZF on the right. MES on the left, YM in the middle. So watching YM first, the platform definitely froze. We were in a profit when it froze. Very, very choppy response. You can see significantly choppy response. No, we're still setting up a breakout, but it's very, very risky, Sal. That's the reality. I'll still trade it, but I understand it's got extreme risk. It's the nature of this report. The YM, the chart did freeze. The platform did freeze. I asked Bullinox. They do not admit to freezing data. They say their data never freezes. That they sent me an email saying you got to ask Ninja. So they won't take any responsibility for any data feed problems. And then if you look at that was I apologize. MES was on the left. MES was on the left. And that froze. Okay, watch. MES, those gold orders didn't last very long, but we were not out of the trade at the time. And then in the middle, the YM what's interesting is the orders were gold, which usually represents orders that aren't working. And it was momentary, and then the YM continued to work. Bonds, we were in sim, not live, and a lot of prop companies don't allow bond trading. Night, in sim, there was a little bit of orange. So it's just a very, it is a very high risk report. But bonds pretty much had a profitable move. But even in sim, there was a little bit of what looked like orange orders. So it's just a report. If you're going to trade it, you just have to accept the risk. Because it can also give you a really nice profit also. So the YM setup for the breakout is a trigger at 829.58. The bracket is 40. And we've got targets of, you can use targets of anywhere between 20 and, believe it or not, we've had 300 tick moves in March on this report. I would not be greedy on this type of a report. These are the reports that I don't like to be greedy because if you get a little bit of a freeze and it doesn't hit your target, you don't want it to have to go all the way back up to the top of the burst. I think that you just want to be conservative on targets. There's a real strong possibility it could whip around. And if you're looking for huge targets, you might not hit them and you might have trouble managing the trade until everything settles down. So sometimes when you're not greedy, it can burst, hit your targets, give you a profit, and you don't care what happens on the platform. So I'm just going to, you can use anywhere between 20, and 100 on your targets, but I would not go quite that big on my second target. I wouldn't. People will, and it's okay, but sometimes I like to be conservative. The stop is 50, and if I hit my first target, I will use the target one stop move to go to break even minus 5 ticks. Then I will go down and I will label the trade BRK for breakout YM, and then I'll trade it on my same prop account that I had set up that reversal continuation. Because the idea of the reverse continue is after the news, the breakout is before the news. And then the one thing I like to look at is where the bracket, what's the width of the bracket, right? So I set the time to 0 for a moment. I set the time on 0 just for a moment. Put the chart and the software set on sim. Put my chart trader on sim so I can gauge the bracket management. Okay, that's what I'm looking to do. Gauge bracket management. Then I enable a 0 time trade, and that bracket's a little bit wide, so I can shrink it. I can turn off the trade by clicking the X, turn off the trade, and now put my time back to where it is, the correct time, 8:29:58. The correct chart, correct account. Apply it, okay it. Chart trader gets the same account, and then I can turn it on. So now my breakout is ready on the YM. Good morning. And then on the MES, we'll do something similar. MES is a breakout, triggering at 58. The bracket is 30. And I would do the same thing on targets. I wouldn't go completely crazy. You know, anywhere between 20 and 50, somewhere in there. And then our stop on the MES is 50. On the ES, it's 20. And that gets labeled BRK, MES. And I'll do the same thing with time, set it to 0 just for a minute so we can look at the bracket. Make sure my chart trader is on sim also. Enable it. And then that bracket's a little wide. So I'm just looking for a manageable bracket, that's all. And now I'll go back, put the time back to 8:29:58. Slide down and put my chart software on the correct account. Apply it and okay it. And then put chart trader on the same account. If your chart trader is not on the same account, you won't see the orders. and then turn it on. You will not see the orders, okay? Well, Nitin, if they let you trade bonds in general, they won't generally turn an instrument off for one trade. They'll either let you trade it or they won't. And then I'm going to set up a sim test on bonds just so we can watch ZF. So I really won't pay any attention to that. It's a bracket of 8, targets of 8, I'd say up to 8 and 20-ish. And the stop is 20 on ZF. And I'll do the same thing with the time. I'll set it to 0 just to have a manageable bracket. I'll label it just bonds. I don't need to say breakout bonds. It's the only bond setup. Now we are getting near rollover. We are definitely getting near rollover. And then bonds I'll put back 829.58, leaving it in sim. Apply it. Anytime you make a change, you have to apply it and okay it so the change gets made. Calvin, you got take profit trader. All right, so you could see the market had a giant volatility candle on the tariff news, and then the market has kind of normalized. It's definitely waiting for this report. I think that we will get frozen platforms. I'm just telling you what I think. So you have to be willing to blow up a prop account when a platform freezes. It's the nature of it. Doesn't always blow up. Sometimes, it'll freeze and come back and you'll make money. Sometimes it'll freeze, come back, you'll lose money. Sometimes it'll freeze, come back, and you'll have orders that you didn't expect to be on the chart. So always be prepared to manually trade after a report like this. Okay? Prop shop trader. Sounds like a car repair company. Now it's very interesting when you look at the high of day, low of day, the YM is right in the middle of both. The MES is right in the middle of both. That really tells you that the market is waiting for this particular event. So Tick Blaze is some sort of is it new data feed, Doc? Is that what it is? Or is it it's a platform? It's a platform. Okay, that's what I wasn't sure. I haven't looked at it yet. New platforms, they come and go, and you need a lot of users before it's viable to put your software on a platform. It's not so easy. And then there's this Project X. Yep. All right, here we go. Just remember, you don't have to trade the breakout if you don't want to take the risk, right? You don't have to. You can trade after the news. So our brackets will show up now. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous YM trade. Now the MES didn't work because it looks like it whipped down. It looked like it whipped down first. And it looks like bonds might have done the same thing also, that they whipped down. The YM just looks like it had a straight burst up. The news slightly down, all right? So that would certainly be considered good news. Definitely would be considered good news. Let me see what there. I'm just curious. It's point 0.1 versus point 0.2. And year over year looks pretty good. So, you're at new highs. It's very difficult on the MES. The YM pulled back off the high. So, unfortunately, the bond bracket was just too darn small, as was the MES bracket also. Now, it's good news. There's no question it's good news. I'm was thinking of a long, but I'm going to probably wait. Probably wait. So a big YM winner, a lousy bond trade. Now I just tested bonds. Bonds, it just looks like the bracket was too small. The move was big. The move was pretty big, it looks like. It looks like it might have been around 14 ticks on a possible move down. Our bracket was only 8. I can't remember a trade where we've ever used more than 10 ticks on bonds. Unhandled exception is a platform error, Roz, and I think that at the YM, no, I didn't look at MYM. Everything did a whip, but it was not a huge whip, but it was a big enough whip to ruin brackets. MES definitely whipped enough to ruin the bracket because it looks like, Chantal, correct me if I'm wrong, looks like about a 36 tick whip on MES. I haven't looked at MNQ, so I don't know about MNQ. It looks like MES whipped about 36. Bonds, it looks are about 14. 13, possibly. And let's see if there's anything else. YM. What was your bracket, Doc, on YM? So we used 40. we use 40, but I'm not seeing that much. I'm not seeing, you have to look, if you want to really, first off, turn off all your breakout trades. Make sure your breakouts are turned off before you start moving charts around. So Calvin, you used 40. Okay, you used MYM. So we used YM. In order to see exactly how much of a whip, you've got to look at a very low time frame chart. 5 range or a 1 range if you can see it. Usually the NQ needs a 5 range. But when you look at the YM, now Calvin, you say you used MYM. So just curious, an MYM on a 1 minute. So I don't see a wick with the naked eye on the MYM, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. It does not mean it's not there. There can definitely be a wick that you don't see unless you go to a much smaller time frame chart, like a 5 range, for instance. You go 5 range, then you got to go all the way back to 829.58. That's when orders were put on the chart. So you can see right here on the YM 829 excuse me 58, there's a downward movement before the move up that you can't see with the naked eye. And that move is 51 ticks. All right. So the MYM needed a 55 tick bracket. If you look at the same YM chart on the 5 range, and again, you go back to the time of the event. That's what you have to do. The time your orders go on the chart. And the YM so I can only, if I need a little bit smaller time frame, but using 57, 1 second before, it was only a 14 tick drop. So our 40 tick bracket was more than enough on the full size YM. Yep, it was very, very, very clean. And then if you do the same thing on MES, and let's go and see if a 1 range will work. Let's use it. Let's see if a 1 range will work. Go back to the time you would have put your orders on the chart. So the MES, '59 was right here. Ballparking it right here. What we use on the ES, was it a 20 or a 30 bracket? I have to look at the DMM. 20 on the MES. So if you look at 59, it's right here. And it goes all the way down First it made a 7 tick move. Then it looks like it went up 7 in that area, maybe 10. So it didn't fill. It doesn't fill until that first move, that third move down. That's what it looks like to me, doing a quick. And that's where it got us 35 ticks down. So the MES could have used a 40, 45 tick bracket possibly to be safe. That's how you can look with a one range or a 5 range chart. So you could see the moves that you can't always see with the naked eye. But Calvin, I traded YM. I'm just warning, that's all. I traded YM. So if you figure I'm trading YM, right? I'm not a lover of MYM at all. I don't like MYM. I don't know why. I think the liquidity on the MYM, let's look at the liquidity. MYM, the YM doesn't even have great liquidity. So I'm not a fan of the MYM at all. I don't even have it. I don't even have it in my platform. I never trade the MYM. Oh, I do have it. All right. And then next we're getting close to rollover. So we're getting close to MYM 0925. Huh, I didn't see them. So they'll be there now. So new market analyzer. MYM's on 6. Let's look at 6. We're not at rollover yet. We've got almost a week. Rollover's not till after the weekend. So MYM volume compared to YM, they look almost exact. But it's not a lot. 18, 19,000 is not a lot. Look at ZF. 442,000. Now, when is that really important? When you're trading cash. When you're trading cash, you want the best liquidity you can get. More volume often gives you more liquidity. All right, so MES, we did not win. We won big on the YM. We had like an $800 winner on the YM. And bonds, we were just simming. And bonds needed, it looked like a 13 tick bracket. Let's look at bonds on a smaller time frame. Do the same analysis on bonds. So what you have on bonds is 829. 829.58 is when we put our orders on. So it's similar. Everything did a similar move. Almost everything did a similar. Not everything. YM didn't. But it looks like the bond bracket might have been big by just 1 or 2 ticks. Maybe a 12 bracket might have worked on bonds. That's what it looks like. A 12 bracket could have worked on bonds. Maybe not, because look, it consolidated and then went down further before it went up. So it's more than that. And that's why you have to look carefully, right? The move really is, I think our original thinking might have been correct. So let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Give it the benefit of the doubt that it started to move down there, but you got to go to there. It was about 15, 13 to 15 ticks, it looks like. Can you use a bracket that big? If you did, you had a 32 tick move. So there would have possibly been some room. It went up a little bit more even. I think you could have made money with bonds even with a big, very big bracket because it never really pulled back after that initial little whip. But that's how you look at things and figure out if any changes you want to make for the next time. It's certainly a big enough moving report that, if we had indications that a bond bracket needed to be 15 ticks, we would do it. We would do it, knowing that you're leaving profit in the bracket. It's almost a doubling of the bracket. There's no question you're going to probably leave some profit in the bracket, especially if you have a 32 tick move. What if you have 4 ticks of slippage? You're down to, about 12 ticks of possible profit. So you are leaving profit in the bracket. Bullinox. So it looks like the YM was one of the best. Alfonso, you traded ES cash, froze, but then it came back. It sounds like that what happened is it got you out of the trade flat. That's what it sounds like. You can look in your executions. Look in your executions on the ES and see where you got in and out. See if it actually traded also. You can make sure it actually traded. So RTY, which we don't really look at a lot, had a looks like it had a pretty good move up also. So you could do the same kind of analysis. So if executions is blank for whatever reason, it didn't trade. So the other thing you could do is look in your log file. Are there any errors where, for whatever reason, you could see if the software turned off? So that you can check to see if anything got turned off. Sometimes it'll show disabling Ninja script strategy. Yeah, there's just no orders on the chart. Now, the other thing you want to do, everybody should do this, and we've said this previously, go to new, make sure that your Ninja script output is always minimized on your trade workspace, your trade room workspace, because Ninja script output would show you if you forgot to turn the strategy on. It would be blank if the strategy is on. Okay? So everybody should always go to new, Ninja script output. It'll be blank if you haven't traded yet with any strategy, and then minimize it and save your workspace. And that way, whatever workspace you're using, which should be your trade room workspace, it'll have that output saved so you could look. That Ninja script output shows text of every little thing that a strategy would do, even more than the log file. So that's something that if you trade with strategies, you should have that saved as part of your workspace. So you never have to remember to make sure it's being used. And that way you can look at things. So tricky, definitely a difficult report to trade. YM was good, needed, bigger brackets. Bigger than we've used. YM we had perfectly. Bonds, we've not really had an issue of the bracket. And then same thing with MES. MES is pretty new to this report, so it's still being tweaked. And a 50 bracket is not completely unreasonable on MES. Say for argument's sake, you have 134 ticks of movement. So a 50 bracket, I would use a 50 bracket if we had other instances of needing a bracket that big. I would use it going forward, probably anyway, because of the potential size of moves. I'd rather have some profit left in the. You could have a trade that gets stopped out if too much profit is left in the bracket. You could. But I'd rather risk a bigger bracket, just from my way of thinking. You're always thinking about what you'd rather risk. You want to avoid a stop out at all costs. So if there's an instance of a 48 bracket being required, even for one or two trades, I would use the bigger bracket. Especially if there's a history of more than 100 tick moves. If there's a history of 50 tick profits, then you can't use that bracket because there won't be any profit. All right, we will be back. We'll be back for oil. I'm sorry, my throat is a mess this morning. So we'll be back at 10 for the crude oil report. So I'll see everybody back here. We generally don't haven't posted every video, Dora. I mean, we just don't. It's just we don't have the resources to record, to post every video. But if there's a video you're dying to see, I can certainly get it posted for you. Okay? Anytime we stream, it stays up. So, like, we stream 2 or 3 times a week usually, and those obviously stay up on our YouTube channel. But this hasn't, if you really want it, I'd be happy to get it posted for you and send you the link. All right? All you have to do is ask me. It's not that big a deal. We have a fair amount of posted trade room videos on our website. It's just hard there's so much to do that it's hard to stay on top of it and get our team members to post everything. In fact, I'll tell her to start doing it again. Okay, I'll see everybody at 10. So we'll be back here. See you all in a little bit.